SCP-1230 is called A Hero is Born. I'm getting some fairy tale vibes from this one, guys. We're going to react to this one. It's by SCP Exposed. Make sure to subscribe to them. Subscribe to me if you like reaction videos. And let's get into this one.
The owner of the bookstore was sorting through a pile of books in the back of the shop.
Okay,
the last book in the pile was one he didn't recognize. It had a green hardback cover, but had no title on the front.
Mysterious book.
He picked up the book and opened it to the first page.
The Grand Grimoire?
The words, "A Hero is Born," were written on the page.
All right.
But that was all. He turned the rest of the pages, but they
blank
were all
storybook.
blank. He had no recollection of
What's
ever
the
buying
story
the book
with it?
and really had no idea how it had come to be in his
What's the
store.
story with
He
this
closed the book and didn't give it another thought.
All right.
That evening, when he returned home from work, he ate his dinner and settled down in front of the television.
Right.
It wasn't long before his eyes started drooping and he found himself falling asleep.
Dinner and television after a long
he
day of
started
work?
dreaming, the images so vivid in his mind. He was riding a horse, galloping through a dense forest.
Look, his hair's
the
all
wind
flowing
blowing
in the
his
wind
hair.
and stuff.
He felt exhilarated
My
and
boy
powerful.
feeling like
He
Fabio.
had no idea where he was going, but he knew that he had an urgent purpose.
You had a quest.
As he exited the forest, he could see a palace with a tall tower in front of him.
Going on too?
In the top window, he could
Rapunzel,
see a woman,
Rapunzel, let down
actually
your
a
hair.
princess, her golden hair flowing down the walls of the tower.
And everybody's
"Help
hair's
me,
flowing.
help me," she screamed. He knew immediately that he had to rescue her. He urged his horse forward and sped towards the tower.
Right.
But just
He's
as he
riding
reached the
bareback,
gate
too.
at the grounds of the palace,
Dragon?
2 fire-breathing dragons jumped out in front of him.
dragons.
His horse reared up at the
Well, you
sight
better
of
call
them,
Shrek.
and he nearly lost his seat.
And Donkey.
He took his sword and plunged it into the heart of each dragon, killing them instantly. Adrenaline surged through his body. He was invincible. "Help!
Obviously,
Help,
if
me.
he
He
single-handedly
heard the voice of the
killed
princess
2
crying out for help.
dragons.
He jumped off his horse and ran inside the palace. When he reached the top of the staircase, he saw 2 wolves standing outside the door of the princess's
You just
bedroom.
destroyed 2 dragons.
They were snarling
Wolves are
and
gonna be
growling, their huge
easy,
teeth
bruh.
bared viciously.
Easy.
He picked up a chair and threw it across the hallway at the wolves. It hit one of them, causing it to yelp. The 2 wolves turned and ran towards him. In a flash, he pulled out his sword and stabbed them both in the chest. He ran to the door and opened it. "Don't worry, princess. I'm here to save you." He picked up the princess and carried her out of the palace to his waiting horse. They both
her
jumped
hair.
on and galloped off into the sunset.
I bet her
He opened
shampoo
his eyes and yawned.
bill is high.
Wow, that was one strange dream.
Yeah.
Welcome back to
Can you
SCP
imagine
Exposed.
the shampoo bill?
Today we bring you safe class subject
Talk about a lot of Pantene to wash
SCP-1230.
that, especially after
But
dragging
before I
on the
go
ground.
on, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you won't miss out
You
on
got it,
any
dude.
SCP stories.
Thank you for the videos, man.
SCP-1230 is an unlabeled green hardcover book with no apparent exceptional qualities.
Okay.
When SCP-1230 is opened, it displays the phrase "A hero is born" on the first page viewed, while all other pages will be blank. Resetting once the book is
It
closed.
elicits the dream.
This has no obvious effects at first, but upon falling asleep, the reader will dream of a fantasy world where they are the protagonist of a troubled land.
Sure.
Dreamers are completely aware and all senses work just as well as when awake. Results vary depending on the imagination of the reader and are mostly attuned to fantasies of adventure that the reader would enjoy. In the mind of the reader, these
I would
dreams
want to
have been
read
documented to last anywhere from 45 seconds to 200 years. But in reality, the reader will usually never be asleep longer than they would normally.
Oh.
Upon awakening, the reader is able to remember every aspect of their dream in detail.
Living
In SCP-1230 induced dreams, there is always a character called the Bookkeeper appearing as a bearded man in a green cloak who claims to be the personification of SCP-1230 himself.
Okay.
SCP-1230-1 has been reported to be very amicable and helpful towards dreamers.
Sure.
It has stated that it enjoys creating these fantasy-scapes and always tries to shape them in such a way that the dreamer garners the most entertainment out of it.
I would live out
It has
some
expressed
cool video
sorrow
game
when the dream
stuff,
comes to
bruh.
an end and asks the dreamer to please visit again soon. SCP-1230
This
was
is kinda
originally
neat.
kept in a secure storage locker at Site-12. Access required minimum Clearance 2, with authorization and supervision by Clearance 3 research and security staff respectively. Supervising personnel were not to view the book's contents. Personnel accessing the book were required to submit written accounts of dreams experienced within 48 hours of access.
Alright, that's
Now,
not
however,
bad.
the book has been relocated to a secure storage locker behind the desk of Site-12's main library. Access is available to Clearance 2 personnel deemed to be in satisfactory psychological condition by psychiatric staff.
So you can actually
Personnel
take the dream.
accessing SCP-1230 must
Can it
submit
hurt you
written
at all?
accounts of their
Or
dreams
is it
within
just
48 hours of
dreams?
access and submit to follow-up psychological examination.
Okay.
SCP-1230
That'd
was
be
discovered
worth
in
it,
a
in
small
my opinion.
bookstore.
Some
The
cool
shopkeeper had
adventures
no
while you
recollection
dreamed,
of
man.
owning
I
the
love having
unlabeled
good
book,
dreams. Can
but
you imagine
attempted
having
to sell
great
a story
dreams
to
like
local
that?
newspapers about a magical dream book. The Foundation was able to dispel the story as a hoax, and
Sure.
SCP-1230 was confiscated. A number of experiments were conducted on SCP-1230. Dr. Fletcher, in an attempt to test its effective range, opened the book and boarded a flight to his hometown, where he spent the night at a hotel. Upon his return, the doctor reported that SCP-1230-1 appeared in his dreams and explained that once you read A Hero is Born, the dream is immediately implanted in your subconscious, after which SCP-1230-1 is able to manipulate it remotely. Dr. Fletcher expressed his appreciation for SCP-1230-1's cooperation. A camera was set up above the book, and using a mechanical arm, the book was opened. All pages were revealed to be blank. It seems the book is only effective when
So
opened by
only a
beings
person.
that are able to have dreams.
Right.
SCP-1230-1 explained to a
Interesting.
subsequent dreamer that it is actually only able to affect beings with an imagination, and that most creatures such as animals would not be affected.
Sure.
One D-Class was instructed to open the book, and after much reassurance that his experiences would only be dreams, ordered to immediately find a way to kill himself in the dream.
Wow.
The subject was asleep for merely 45 seconds before he awoke with a start and a nervous sweat. He reported being at the summit of a volcano called the Ashen Spire on a quest for Caladius, the Blessed Blade. When asked how the subject knew the names, he stated, "It's like I knew them all along." He apparently leapt into the volcano and felt an intense heat before awakening.
Wow.
D-Class requested permission to give it another go. Request was denied.
Oh.
One D-Class was instructed to open the book and attempt to non-fatally
imagine,
injure himself in his dream.
Non-fatally
After 6
injured.
hours, the D-Class awoke and reported that he was able to feel a numbed sort of pain where it was never so intense as to be unbearable.
Okay.
He also reported meeting an elderly cloaked man who asked him why he was harming himself, but thanked him for not immediately killing himself, like that other rude fellow. Professor Blyth filed a request for access to the book and was quickly permitted, given his level 4 clearance. Staff members recalled that Professor Blyth was almost visibly shaken with excitement, and some reported that
guess so.
Professor was an avid fan of tabletop and role-playing games.
Oh, yeah. I
Surveillance
bet
shows
she
that
had a
Professor
good
Blyth
dream.
opened the book, read the phrase, sat down beside the desk, and promptly fell asleep. Staff members were alarmed when the professor did not awake after 15 hours and alerted security. The on-site medical staff were able to confirm that Professor Blyth was still alive and in good health.
Right.
After approximately 24 hours since falling asleep, he began to move, reported to have slowly raised his head and looked around the room, appearing deeply confused. Security entered the room to ensure he was all right, to which he replied, "Where am I?" He was sent to medical, where staff explained where and who he was. Several minutes later, he appeared to have regained his memory and excused himself to the restroom.
All right.
When 15 minutes passed and Professor Blyth had not exited, a nurse entered to find he had hanged
hung
himself with his
himself?
belt. A scribbled message on the wall revealed his last words.
Can't go back
I
to
can't
this?"
go back to this. Dr. Fletcher went to ask SCP-1230-1 what had happened, but upon opening the book, all its pages were soaking wet with the same message on every page. "I'm sorry. I never intended for this to happen. I just wanted to make people happy." Repeated over and over.
The
book
fantasy
remained in
was
this state
so
for 3 weeks, and
incredible
its
that he
desk had to be
couldn't go
wiped
back
dry
to
bi-weekly.
normality.
In an attempt to communicate, Dr. Fletcher placed a sticky note inside the book with the statement,
Can
"I'd like
you
to talk to you
imagine?
if that's all right." The next morning, he filed a report about a dream he had concerning SCP-1230-1.
Okay.
The following is a transcript of the report. Upon falling asleep last night, I dreamt I was in a dark void. There was a street lamp, and underneath it was SCP-1230-1
sad.
sitting in a puddle. His cloak was visibly soaked, and he was sobbing profusely. I remember our conversation. "Bookkeeper, is that you? My God, man, where are we?" asked Dr. Fletcher. I couldn't think of anything to make for a landscape," replied the bookkeeper between sobs. "Bookkeeper, what happened that day? Why did Professor Blyth kill himself? We have to know your side of the story." "He had such an active imagination. I was able to create a vast and beautiful universe for him, and it was obvious that he wanted a life like that for so long.
Bliss,
he
man.
conquered foul beasts and rescued princesses. He built kingdoms and even raised a family, but he never wanted to leave. He delved so far into his fantasy world that I soon realized he preferred his dream over the real world. I reminded him that this was all merely an illusion, but he wouldn't listen to me. He stated that if he was ever forced to leave, he would immediately end his life. I tried to keep him happy for as long as I could. Bookkeeper, how long was the dream from his point of view? 200 years, Doctor. I did my best, but I could only hold on to him for 200 years. As sweet as dreams may be, eventually we all have to wake up.
It's the truth.
I awoke almost immediately after. I can't believe he spent 200 years in his dream.
Wow.
I'm astounded by his foolishness, but it's such a shame to have lost a brilliant mind to his own delusions.
I mean,
Shortly after the report was filed, surveillance showed Dr. Fletcher slipping another small paper into SCP-1230. A few days later, SCP-1230 began showing its usual "A hero is born" greeting once again. When asked what the note said, Dr. Fletcher declined to give detailed comment, simply stating that he just gave it some friendly advice. During initial testing, SCP-1230-1 asked Dreaming personnel if it could be relocated to an area with many books, so that it could think of even better ways to construct its fantasy
that's
scapes.
kind of cool.
After numerous experiments were performed to ensure that the book posed no threat, the request was accepted, and SCP-1230 has been relocated to Site-12's library. What do you think of that SCP case?
Very, very cool, man. I don't know. If I had the ability to control and manipulate my dreams in a positive way like that, would I have the self-control to pull back? Because, man, I got a vivid imagination. I've been playing games and stuff like that for years, tabletops and RPGs and video games. It would be incredible what I could imagine myself doing, I'm sure. Have a cool dream. If I had an SCP that was kind of building a set for me to play around in. Oh gosh, this was really, really cool, guys. SCP Exposed, make sure to subscribe to him. Subscribe to me if you like reaction videos too. Thanks so much for watching. As always, this is Zueljin signing off. We'll see you next time.